Hey, welcome everybody. It's 11 o'clock. My name is Phil DJ Right Click Valentine. In case you didn't recognize me, because as you may have gathered, I lost all my facial hair. Well, I lost all my hair. Well, maybe I still have some eyebrows left, but don't pull on them, Khalees, because they'll fall out on my laptop. So, they're hanging in by a thread. Uh, just lost my taste buds too, which is kind of annoying. The two things I can still taste are, well, three things: pickles, mustard, and onion. I can't taste much of anything else now, so maybe that'll ha help with my sweet tooth. Right. Well, it is what it is. So we are at Coaching for Coaches. I've been in recovery since 1987, recently celebrated 36 years, 25 years at CCAR. And what many might have gathered is that in the last couple months, my second cancer diagnosis. This one's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that should be treatable with a few rounds or several rounds of chemotherapy, and that's what I'm going through, and that's why I'm hairless, and that's why I look at myself up on that screen and say, "Yes, Phil, you definitely have a face for radio." Yes, I do. So, maybe I ought to just like mute this screen, like stop video and go to, there we are. Nice. I got a nice smile and a goatee. No, not quite. Anyway, so we're doing coaching for coaches, and we've been updating our website and chronicling things. And I did this particular topic, oh, probably at least 15 to 18 months ago. And so we're going to revisit it and record it and talk about it. And I think it's relevant today too. Of course it is. And I want some people to introduce themselves. Doesn't have to be everyone, who's ever willing to introduce yourselves and something you're afraid of. Something you're afraid of. Now, I'll start the conversation a little bit as you think about that. And um, I didn't, I don't think overall I'm afraid of too much anymore. But I've also been in recovery 36 years. And I think one of the biggest fears I always had was a fear of dying. But when like 2 years ago, roughly, both my parents passed, and I was at their bedside when they passed, and that helped with my fear of helping me confront the fear, really. And um, I think about it, and I think a lot of the fear has gone. I'm not looking forward to it, but I don't think I'm no longer afraid of it because I don't know that anybody can escape it. So that might be a heavy, deep one. But another thing I found I was frightened of was there was one day, one evening on the back shores of Cape Cod where I was out in the middle of the night by myself, and I was fishing for striped bass. And I was using a live eel for bait. And those aren't the best baits to use, but they're a little freaky to use. But anyway, I was casting this live eel out, and I was just gradually like turning the reel. You reel it in real slow until you feel a bass pick it up. And the wind was blowing from right to left. And as I'm out there, I notice something coming down the beach at me like full speed. And I literally just screamed at the top of my lungs. I went, ah! And I'm running down the beach away from this thing that was chasing me. And I was just waiting for it to grab my ankle and kill me. And I turned around, and you know what it was? A white plastic grocery bag caught in the wind. So I have no idea, like, am I afraid of white plastic grocery bags or things like chasing me down the beach in the middle of the night? Yeah, it was pretty apparent. So something that you got. Introduce yourselves, where you're from, and something you're afraid of. Who'd like to go? Khalees.
I'll go.
Thank you.
I'll be vulnerable. My name is Khalees. I'm a recovery coach professional and a woman in long-term recovery. I celebrated 6 years on February 28th. Whoop whoop. I am in Boston, Lincolnshire, United Kingdom, and something I'm afraid of is being alone. I think like dying alone or growing old and being alone. I mean, my son is going to be 11 this year, and then like I'm not in a relationship and I'm my family, but like they're all older than me. Not no offense, mom. I love you, but like, I just don't want to be alone. I think that's my biggest fear is being alone one day.
Hmm. I think I had that fear too, and as I get older, I appreciate being alone. I,
Don't get me wrong, I love alone time, but it can also be like very isolating, being
I
alone.
got it. The difference between isolation and solitude. Well said. Kurt.
I am Kurt, calling in from Holland in long-term recovery. Um, I'm afraid of anger. Um,
Ooh.
my own anger.
Mhm.
I've suppressed it for decades. I just came out of a short relationship, and the woman was actually a psychotherapist, and she mentioned that she thought I needed to do some more work on anger, and I've scheduled a screening for therapy, and I'm scared to find how much anger I actually have in me.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Kurt. Mike.
So I'm Mike Doyle. I oversee a recovery coach program for Alliance Health in Norwich, Connecticut. I'm a person in long-term recovery myself. Just celebrated in August, I celebrated 24 years. Which that the correlation between 24 hours and 24 years kind of hit me because I remember how long 24 hours used to be. Still is sometimes. Um, I'll tell you what, one of my biggest fears as I'm sitting here thinking about it, is failure,
Mm.
failing. And that's something I think I've always had, and it's not just the appearance of failure, but that probably plays into it too. But, you know, just, I think it's one of those things that was like ingrained in me, early on. And why right now we're looking at some funding challenges and, the future of certain programs, which I laugh because we get all kinds of accolades and people are talking about stuff, and then when it's time to write a check, nobody seems to want to. So that's it's one of those things that's completely out of my control. But when you start talking about lives and the balance of people that actually work for me and people that they serve, it kind of gets a little, there's a lot of fear involved with that. So
Understood. Thank you, Mike. Jason. I can't hear you, Jason. I don't know why. I don't think your headset's working or something. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, headset gone.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, hey, I wanted to identify with Kurt. That was great. I'm kind of afraid of my own anger too sometimes. But what I wanted to talk about is I think I'm deathly afraid of my mother. I kid you not, like it's for a multitude of reasons. One, we've been through a lot with each other. There's some trauma associated, and also my mother has given me some of the worst advice ever in my life, and it has backfired. And she is such a little spitfire. She's 5'1", and I'm kind of a big guy, and I'm a giant to her. But I am definitely afraid of her
Mhm.
because she will not hold back her anger towards me, and she likes to take other things out on me too. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna respect my mom. So my mom.
Thank you, Jason. I was not expecting that one. That's cool. Jesse, what's up?
Hey everyone. My name's Jesse. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is after over 20 years in addiction, substance use disorder, 10 years in the Minnesota prison system, March 24th, I'll have 6 years sober, and I'm the regional outreach manager for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. When it comes to fears, I guess, if we can be completely honest and vulnerable, given that history, that past, I have 3 children, ages range from 12 to 22. And I have concerns for their eternal destiny. They grew up in the mix, right? And so they're the younger one. I have maybe less concerns with my older. They're in it, right? They grew up in it, and I'm still sort of praying and anticipating for the day for them to come around, and that hope is there. So they see it now, but there's a real valid concern about that for me. So praying.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that. Mike, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. And I'm going to give you, this is from Lake Superior, guys. So
You're
hello
really
from-
good.
hello from the UP. I just ate lunch on Lake Superior, had a pasty. I'm assistant director at a treatment center way up north up here. I'm an RCPF, and I'm madly in love with the C-car model. So this is just really a thrill for me to join. And I do have to duck and get to an AA meeting that I help with here at noon. So I will be ducking out. But this sounds like maybe a really weird fear from someone coming up here. But I am becoming irrationally afraid of wild animals. And I'll tell a quick backstory. We own 11 acres, and it is fairly wilderness. And when we bought it 20 years ago, it was deer and partridge and bunny rabbits, and it was really cool. We've got trails and everything, and it's great. And as the world has changed, it's now wolves and coyotes and bear. And this morning, as I was driving into town, and I was only a couple miles out of town, I had a bobcat run across my road. In theory, according to the DNR, they don't exist up here, but they do. And so I'm this peace-loving guy, but I know, like, I own a 22 pistol to go back in my own woods, and that just strikes me as being afraid of doing something I really love to do. It's probably irrational. My wife laughs at me, but my wife laughs a lot, so it's all good. But anyway, good to be here. Quiet, let someone else go.
Thank you, Mike.
You betcha.
Ed, how are you?
I am well. Phil, you're looking great.
Thank you.
Gosh, when I was listening to your story about the white bag on the beach, the first thing that came to my mind is one of my fears. And one of my fears is a sudden noise. Any sudden, quick, loud noise. I could be doing something in the kitchen quietly. My partner could come in and say something very simple, and I will jump 3 feet up in the sky because I did not expect him. It could be something where I might be at a gym running on the treadmill. Someone next to me drops a weight that makes this loud thud. I will suddenly just jump off that treadmill in this. My heart is pounding, and I am just terribly, terribly frightened by a balloon popping. That is my worst torment, to see or anticipate a balloon popping. Okay, one last thing I'm going to say, which is so crazy. You know the Pillsbury things where you open, twist, and they pop? And that I cannot open it. I have to have someone open it for me because that sudden pop scares the crap out of me in that moment.
Wow. This is always gets so fascinating. Anybody else? Introduce yourself and something you're afraid of. Maggie.
Oh boy. Hi. So I'm Maggie. I am a recovery coach, professional facilitator. I'm a person in long-term recovery. February 6th, I celebrated 32 years. And it even feels weird. Like I really went to that whole place. I'm afraid of my intuitions. And because I feel like that they are so true, right? But then there are times that they come up and I'm thinking, and so like, either this person is going to call or something is going on with this person or something, and they kind of end up being true sometimes. And so I really am afraid of, my intuitions. And at times I really try to block out my gut feelings sometimes by being busy, if that makes any sense. But I recognize that just from this question, that is one of the things that, and I've never said it before, but I absolutely fear my intuitions.
Wow. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Neetha.
Hey, when Maggie said that, I can really relate to that. So my name is Neetha. I just celebrated 26 years in recovery last week. And I have a few fears. I have a fear of not knowing how to manage and support a multi-generational household and making the wrong decisions, because I don't know anybody who's written a book and a handbook to help me out with the guide for that one. And I have a fear of stepping into a greater space to make a bigger impact.
Okay.
And that's scary sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Bjorn.
Hello, I'm Björn. I'm hopefully RCP April 10th. I'm 11 years, I'm coming up to 11 years in sobriety in May, hopefully, one day at a time. Fear is quite interesting topic for me. I was involved in a very serious car accident when I was 18 years old. I was hospitalized 4 months. I was ill 5 years after that. And Monday, I was hit by a car on the highway down here. And I really struggled with PTSD. I was shaking. I was almost crying. I was terrified. Nothing happens to me, but obviously I could not drive my car. It was crashed. But today, when I was driving to the grocery store, I was a little bit late today. I was terrified in traffic. I was really fearful in the traffic. Just to hear that noise of metal squeezing, and that noise is just here, so when I'm driving, I'm so full of fear. Hopefully it will pass after a few weeks, but at the moment it's quite tough. I have 2 days off from work tomorrow and Friday, just only because of self-care. I have to take care of them. So.
Bjorn, where are you? What country?
Sorry, I'm in south of Spain, in Paradise.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Wow. This was a fascinating conversation. Is that Shell?
Hi everybody, my name's Cheryl. Nice to see you all. Sorry I was late, but I know what we're talking about. So I was 2.5 years sober yesterday, which is really mental. And I actually faced a fear today. That's why I wanted to share. So I have a huge fear of people judging me because of my body. I'm really insecure about the way I look. But I've moved to live next to the sea. And as part of International Women's Day, which is on Friday, there was a huge group of women that went sea swimming. And I was really fearful of people judging me because of how I look in a swimming costume and a t-shirt, and people laughing at my fat knees and stuff like that. And weirdly enough, they didn't. And so I went in the sea in the UK for the first time ever, and I did it wearing lycra, and I did it 2.5 years sober, which is mental. So I'm feeling pretty good about facing that fear. And watch out Bournemouth this summer, because I'll be there in a teeny weeny bikini now.
Thank you, Shell. Hi, Tiffany. Good to see you.
Good to be seen. Good morning to everyone. My name is Tiffany T. Scott, and I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. And I have a fear of crowds. And it's odd because I'm often in the midst of crowds due to advocacy, but I get uncomfortable in the space. And thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. What a list we're developing. Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. I'm 11 years sober, like codependent. Can you say like that?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm in the program since 11 years, and I'm good to be here. I'm afraid of getting cancer. A lot of people around me have cancer at the moment, so yeah, that's what I'm fearful about. And yeah, I live here also in Spain, south part of Spain. So good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about cancer is I know, I guess people would think I'm sick because I have cancer now. This is the second time through, but I don't feel like a sick person. I don't identify as a sick person. I don't know what that's about. Just an aside. Anybody else want to introduce themselves and something they're afraid of? Thank you, Michael, because you knew I was going to call on you anyway.
Yeah, I know you were going to call on me. So my name is Michael Serrano, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. One thing it's so ironic that I'm scared of bats because I'm a big Batman fan.
And you're afraid of bats.
I'm shit scared of them. I swear, I'm sorry, but I am. And one day we were sleeping, and my wife wakes me up. She goes, "What is that?" So I look up, and the fan is going on. So I see like the shadow of the propellers, but then I see something flying back and forth, and I was like, what? It's nothing. And then I look again, and I go, "Oh, it's a bat!" And I left her for dead. I ran and left my wife in the room, even closed the door behind me, and left her in there. So I'm terrified. I had an experience when I was a little kid with a bunch of bats coming at me and dancing, like flying around me and stuff. So
yeah, but was there a bat in the bedroom?
Yeah, there was. I had, and then she goes, "Get it," and I go, "Nah." I went to get my father-in-law. He was staying with us at the time. He went in the room with a tennis racket.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I ain't going in there."
Did
I'm
they get
sorry.
the bat out?
Yeah, he got it.
All right, good. Yasmin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yasmin. I've been in recovery for almost 3 years. I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand, so it's nighttime for me.
Wow.
Yeah, international group tonight or today.
Yeah.
What am I fearful of? A lot of things growing up as a kid, but I started to face them. But I think rejection is a big one. I don't like the feeling of being rejected, but then I've also started to hate rejecting people, and I never know how to say no because I'm too scared of their reaction or them taking it personally. So I think it's learning to not be such a people pleaser, and that everyone is going to face rejection at one point in their life. So it's just learning to kind of say no and have my own boundaries. But yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm fearing.
That's a fascinating topic in and of itself. I mean, I learned that just because you say no, that's not a rejection. It's just not a rejection, right? So, wow. Anybody else? All right. Thank you for everybody that shared. We generated quite a list of what people, things that people are afraid of, right? So the first question is, the topic is fear. Did you figure that out? Because you guys are all seasoned, brilliant, like webinar participants. So topic is fear. And I'm going to put a general question out there. What does fear have to do with recovery coaching? And this is where one of you like offers the initial comment. And you do that by either raising your hand in the screen or scrolling down to that little icon on the bottom that says raise hand. and you click on that and you unmute, and I'll call on you like Miss Michelle did. Thank you, Michelle.
Hello, everybody. I'm Michelle from the Jude House in Southern Maryland. I think that fear has everything to do with recovery coaching because, behavioral health and addiction is founded in fear. Why do we use? Why do we get sober? If it's not fear of success, it's fear of failure. So I think as a recovery professional, if you don't have an in-depth understanding of not only your fears, but the recovery that you're working with, what they're afraid of, then how can you provide them solid service?
Well said. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for leading us off. Now, I must be mistaken. That can't be Doug Gould up on the screen. It can't be, but it is.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm well enough.
I'm still waiting for you to get out here to Oregon so we can get
Me
you some
too.
salmon fishing. Greetings from Oregon. Back to the other question, the fear of losing internet connection and arriving late to the meeting. Anyway, I would venture this. What fear has to do with recovery coaching. It's funny when you get participants coming through your door. The fear of the unknown. That's what kept me out of recovery. Was I couldn't picture not having a drink in my hand, and so to me, leaving that lifestyle is fearful because that's all I know. That's a connection I have, and now I'm offering suggestions to participants to journey together with them so they can overcome their fears and realize that drug or that drink they don't need. And so fear keeps people out of recovery, but fear also sometimes is an obstacle. And we as recovery coaches need to do what we need to do on preventing those barriers and obstacles for our clients to reach their goals. So
yeah,
that's how I look at it.
Thank you, Doug. Good to see you. Reggie.
Good to see you too.
Good morning. Reggie James from Cliffside Park, New Jersey. So two things jumped out at me when you talked about fear in this business is one, if I'm not handling my own biases when I'm speaking to somebody and, for whatever reason, I'm not doing it, And the other thing that jumped out at me is if I'm not listening, intently, if my mind is, if I'm distracted in my own head or something and I'm not getting all the information to sit back and, make the right moves, listen more, ask better questions, those are the two things that jump out at me.
Thank you, Reggie. Appreciate that very much. Hi, Virginia. How are you?
Hi, everybody. It's great to see so many beautiful faces up in here this afternoon. My name is Virginia, and I'm a woman in recovery. And I didn't introduce myself earlier, but my fear is getting that 2 a.m. phone call from a family member. Like, it totally petrifies me to think that I'm gonna get a phone call in the middle of the night. And I say that to say that in working with recoveries, I think it'd be good to know or help the recovery identify what they're fearful of, because fear can be so paralyzing. I know for me it is. And, if you can identify it, you can work with it. If we can help our recoveries identify what it is that they're fearful of, we can put together ways to kind of manage that or work around that. I know for me in early recovery, like I was afraid of so much, and if it weren't for loving and caring people in my life to support me in my recovery, to overcome those fears, I wouldn't be where I am today. So again, just helping them move beyond the fear that paralyzes them in their recovery is important.
Thank you, Virginia. Mike.
Yeah, good topic. I mean, fear has a lot to do, yeah, in recovery and recovery coaching. One of the things that I fully believe in is that fear really drives the bus in change. It can either be motivating or it can be crippling. And helping the recovery recognize the fears in their own recovery, I think is a big thing. I always come back to the book Who Moved My Cheese, which is one of the best books I've ever read on change. And there's one point where he writes on the wall, "What would I do if I wasn't afraid?" And it's like, if you could take fear out of the equation, you usually have your answer. Now, actually acting on that's a different story. I mean, but I think when you can have an honest conversation with a recovery and help to walk down that road of fear, identifying some of your own. I mean, hey, look, I mean, I've got a fear of of us not connecting, or if I miss something, or I think I forget who said it earlier, but it's like that, trying not to be tied to the outcome, but, feeling responsible, or at least have some responsibility in the outcome. And, God, what if I miss that? What if, it's not I didn't go down the right path with this person? And, definitely things that always enter my mind. And, I mean, that active listening is so, so important, because a lot of times there are like little clues in that to where, or sometimes they're big, obvious clues, but sometimes there are little clues that, somebody is going down. Like there might be a family member that might not be the best influence, or somebody that might be mad because they're getting sober, or, they're in a relationship to where their recovery won't be supported by that person. And it's trying to identify those things, because the last thing I want to do anyway is set somebody up to fail, and I think that's probably my own biggest fear when working with a recovery is that exactly, and trying to get on that right path. So
Thank you. Good insight. Love it. Laura.
Hi, everybody. I am Laura Connor. I'm in recovery 13 years, and I run a recovery center for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina here.
Nice.
So yeah, it's funny listening to everyone. Of course, I'm piggybacking on things that have been already said, but I think one of my biggest fears for me is that I still don't trust myself to know what a healthy relationship is. I feel like I have very healthy relationships in my work environment, but not necessarily in my personal environment. But then as I was thinking about that, I was, like Mike had said, fear can also be a motivator. At least it is for me. Because it's an opportunity for me to continue to look in the mirror and see if there's anything that I haven't been addressing, or if there's anything that I've been ignoring. If there's something that I really should pay attention to, do I need to go see my therapist? All those things. So I think that same exact fear is something that also motivates me to try to be my best self. And then also I think fear for the relationship between, recovery coach and the recovery, I think fear can also be a component of rapport development. Again, I think Mike was saying it, and maybe several other of you, for me to reveal some of my deepest, darkest fears can be an icebreaker in the relationship, and to humanize who I am with my recovery, to keep things, I don't ever want to be up here, or them to feel like I'm up here and they're below me. So I think it can be an equalizer and a rapport builder. So.
Thank you for those thoughts. Appreciate them very much. Jason.
Yeah, so many great things, you know. And I also like hearing you all. I'm like, you know, I gotta balance like my stuff, my personal fears, not getting in the way of everything, right? And managing that, right? And also like the awareness of like, look, when I first got clean, I had a fear of having a bank account. After I got a bank account, then I had a fear of using an ATM. You know, I had a fear of doing paperwork. I had a fear, and it's all kind of like fear of the unknown and understanding that these recoveries, right, have all kinds of fears. And that's where recovery coaching really comes into place because, like, I would not set up a Facebook account. I would not do it. I was deadly against it. But a friend of mine brought me down to the library and said, "You're going to do this," and helped me set it up. He walked me through it, right? So, like, fear of the unknown for the recovery, just being in my shoes, remembering what I was afraid of, is like, oh my God, you know? So they need us, but it's also managing my fears and expectations in going into each, you know, recovery that I deal with.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Ed. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I love this question, Phil, about what is the significance of fear in the recovery field. And I think it plays a great significance, both as a recovery coach and for the recovery. I'm listening to everyone this morning, and I'm just amazed. And what I'm taking from all of this discussion is that fear exists, no question. There's no way of getting around it. And I think the significance for me in the recovery field is that it's not that we try to avoid fear, it's how do we live with the fear so it does not cripple us? How do we walk through those fears? And as a recovery coach, how do I work with my recovery to help them work through their fears without me adding on to their fears by limiting my own fears with them? So I think it's always a question of not avoidance, but how do we work through those fears and develop the means of becoming bigger, better, and stronger.
Yeah, I said a lot there, which will lead me into my next question. So I'm just going to drill down a little bit. We talked about fear and recovery coaching in general. What is as a recovery coach, what is a fear you have going into a session, if any, with a recovery? Do you have a fear? And what would that be? Mike.
Being completely vulnerable and honest, it's being present in that session. You know, there's a lot of things going on, you know, outside of that session. And it's like one of the things I try to live by is I try to live where my feet are. Wherever my feet are, I try to live in that moment. But sometimes it's really hard, you know, to get distracted by, oh crap, I have this meeting at 1 o'clock, or I have this or I have that. And it's like just trying to put all that aside and blocking that out and being in that room with that person at that time is so important. And I'll be, you know, I'd be lying if I said, you know, I do that 100%. Thankfully, I have some people that'll be like, you know, they'll ask me a question on something they just said, and I'm like, nah, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to ask that again. It's like you know, it doesn't happen as often as it used to, but active listening is one of those things that for me, I have to actively do. You know what I mean? I can't just like go right into it. It's one of those things that I have to focus on with that person. And you know, truly that's probably my biggest fear with a
So
recovery.
let me push back a little bit
Yeah.
on this. So I fully agree that being present as best you can is a goal and an objective of being a recovery coach in that session, right? You want to be present, fully present. Where's the fear? So how does fear tie into that? Why are you, if that's who you are, why are you or you know that's about you, what are you afraid of?
Yeah, I think for me, it's missing something that's important in that, in that particular session, or losing that connection with the recovery, you know what I mean? Where like, if
Yeah,
for
but
some reason, yeah, go ahead.
But how do you know you'd miss it if you're, so why would you be afraid of if you don't know you miss it?
I don't know what I'm saying, but if there's like a result from it, for me not hearing something, then, I'm like, God, if I had, if I had been there, I don't know. It's just truly, it's one of those things that I know that sometimes affects
Gotcha.
me, and yeah, and it's like, I don't want to be not present for something and then some negative result happens, and obviously not because of that, but there might have been something that I could have done more. So
Well, I think there's a fine line too between being aware of yourself and what your tendencies are to being afraid of it. So if I'm aware that I have a tendency not to be fully present, I don't know that I'd be afraid of that, but I'd consciously say, I'm going to really make an effort to be present in this situation.
right. I was going to say, how about this? I'm aware that that happens with me, and I'm afraid that if it does happen, that I'll miss something that's important.
I like that. Well, I can live
Okay.
with that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Maggie.
Okay, so for me, I think it's fear of setting expectations. And
Explain
meaning that, in any type of a session, going in and talking to someone, the first thing that I have to move from my head to my heart, because in my head, I'm hoping that the outcome of this is that the recovery is gonna, kind of like be very open to like saying this and wanting to do this and wanting to do that. So I want to make sure that I'm able to check that all at the door. And, again, with the whole, I think the presence piece for me would be, because that was one of the words I wrote down, expectation and presence, would be for me that I am there and I'm really looking at the framework of the three-legged stool, right? My stuff got checked out back there, right? And I'm able to really hear, I'm listening, right? So that's me managing that stuff of mine so that I am there and I don't have any expectations on it. And also that I fear that the potential of not getting it quite right, but I don't even know what quite right is or would be. But that still is something that kind of happens in my head.
Gotcha. Thank you, Maggie. Doug.
Yeah, it's a real good question here. I think for me, in recovery coaching, there's the differential between peer and recovery is so narrow. We want to keep that relationship there, and for me, staying in the moment. I played baseball, that, Phil. And one of the things that the coach would always instill within you was, what are you going to do when the ball comes to you? And you always start planning ahead. You always start wondering, all right, runner on first and third, 2 outs. What am I going to do when the ball comes to me? And we can actually do that in life, right? We can actually play scenarios out. And sometimes what happens for me, it creates a little anxiety because I'm trying to prepare what may happen in that session with that recovery. Um, asking good questions is important, but I think just staying in the moment and using our active listening skills, our motivation interviewing tools of responding to what we're hearing and just staying in the moment. Many times, even in the coach session, you're going to hear a wide variety of emotions in there. And what I like to do is just let the recovery just share a little bit. And then I like to come back and address some of those things that they're bringing out. But if I go in with my own agenda, if I go in with where I want to treat that person like an object, then I'm going to miss something that may be discovered in that one-on-one time with that recovery. So I just want to stay in the moment. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So that's what I look at.
Thank you, Doug. Khalees.
So immediately I thought, I hope my face doesn't show if my recovery says something, you know, because sometimes my face has a mind of its own and my eyebrows might go up or something, even though I'm like trying to manage my own stuff. That was my first thing. But then whenever I really think about it, my greatest fear, I think, when it comes to supporting people is not having access to additional resources or supports that recovery may need, because here in the UK, we don't have a lot of the things that, you know, maybe the US has, or the waiting list is 18 weeks or 3 months. And sometimes you know, that's not my lane as a recovery coach, if somebody needs some external support. So all I can do is hold space for them, but not having the resources available. And then I feel like this person has come to me and I can't really provide all that support they need.
Yeah, but so is that a fear?
That's a realistic thing. And it
Yeah,
is kind of
so
like a fear, because like that's right. Like I don't go into my coaching sessions with expectations. And if anything was going to come back, that's probably the biggest thing that like I have struggles with or fears, is like, shoot, I hope this person doesn't need more than what I can provide, because that's not available. And I know how it feels to go to get support and then be like, they can't really support me with what I need. And I've been in that situation.
Well, I've delivered many recovery coach academies, and oftentimes when we get to this resources part, there would be people in a rural setting that says that that say, well, we don't have any resources out in our area. And my response to that is, you're there.
Well, of course, like I said, we can hold space, but if somebody has some clinical something going on, I'm not that all of those things, but I can still hold space and I can still
Exactly.
provide other additional resources. But if
But
it was like
I'm
really
not,
technical.
so why I'm pushing back is I don't detect fear on your part there. You understand the situation and it's not ideal. There might be anger, there might be aggravation, but I don't know that it's fear because you're in the space with them. I don't, but just something for you to think about.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael.
I get what you're saying, Phil. So if somebody was to come up to me and be like, hey, meet me in a cave full of bats, I ain't going in there.
All right. When I think about going into I don't know that at this stage in my life, and thank God I got here, right? Because I know when I was a kid, I was driven by fear. But when you work a program of recovery for decades, the fear dissipates, that I'm not afraid of much of anything. You know, I'm really not. So when I go into the session with a recovery, it's more about curiosity. I don't really fear much. I mean, some people have talked in other sessions about getting physically assaulted or verbally berated or, you know, stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know what kind of settings you're doing recovery coaching in, but anyway, if you have, and we all have different levels of fear, and it's perfectly okay. The question is, how do you, and a lot of you talked about your fears going into a session, how do you manage it? I mean, Maggie talked about going in but what do you actually do to alleviate or handle or manage your own fear as a recovery coach? And what have you done? Mike?
Yeah, you know, I think it's part of it, and I think you kind of hit it on the head with me, where it's an awareness, and I think that fear motivates me to stay in that room and kind of push past it. And like I said, as we're sitting here and we're talking about fear, I kind of agree with what you're saying there. It's not a crippling fear. To me, it's a healthy fear, like as a reminder, hey, you know what, you need to be there and you need to be present in that room. And that's kind of what the motivator is for me, where like it's like, okay, you know, I know this about myself. I don't want to miss anything with this person. So I'm gonna try as best I can to be present in the room. And it's, you know, for me, I think it's just that awareness and ability to act in the right direction, because I've done it a few times now, to kind of push past it,
Yeah. Thank you. Barry,
Hey, good morning.
hear from you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Working in the emergency department, I used to be real fearful of the response that I would get when I would go in the room. And the police, so you don't know, people, I was afraid I might see me, somebody that was like angry and, didn't want to be bothered. But what I used to do, what I always did and always do is before I walk in the room, I used to pray. I always pray.
Hmm.
I always say a prayer. It used to comfort me. And I would ask for help. And I felt okay once I got in the room, no matter how people responded. And over time, it became a habit. And so it alleviated me having the fear when I walk into any kind of coaching session. I say the prayer, I ask for help. And I know that, whatever the outcome is, I got the help that I needed. So that's all.
Thank you, Barry. Bjorn.
Fear, I deal with my fear for me, it's very important to address my fear and not keep it as a secret. If I keep my fear as a secret, it will grow. So I need to address it. And I also exercise. It can be spinning or it can be a power walk down the beach. And I try to do that every day. And that helped me a lot. I just want to say that I think all of us living on this planet today, we are a bit more fearful than we was, let's say, for 100,000 years ago. Because I think fear, it is a kind of asset. It's quite good to have fear. That's the reason to we survived. I, as we escaped from predators because of fear 10,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago. And so for me, fear is also an asset. It's good to have fear. But the thing is that in a modern society, it's very difficult to deal with fear because we don't live in natural world as we did for, let's say, when we were hunters. When it's not the same as it was 50,000 years ago. We live in a society where that is not natural for us. So
okay.
So it can be very difficult to cope with fear in these days.
Well, if we have the mindset that it's going to be difficult to cope with fear, guess what it's going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be worse.
It's going to be difficult. If we have the mindset that we can deal with the fear and we can handle it easily and appropriately, guess what it's going to be?
Yeah, but if you are aware and you have a little bit of knowledge of why you have fear, you can use it positive. You can use it as a positive thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn. Doug.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I don't necessarily say it's fear. I like the fact that I learned a long time ago, learning is leading. And so going into that session with the recovery, you don't know what the expectations are going to be. I agree with Barry. A lot of what I do before I even have a participant come through my door is to pray and meditate and get in the right mindset. But staying in the moment. You and I have had these conversations. I mean, I remember going back 6 years ago. I called you when I went through that news with my cancer. It rocked me, and the fear of that unknown gripped me, and you gave me some great advice regarding my recovery program and also my faith and spirituality, and learning about what I was about to face subsided that fear. And I think the more we can educate ourselves, because in this world of drugs and alcohol, there's always something new coming out there in the world of ours. And I think it's important to educate ourselves. So for me, and what I teach our staff here is learning is leading. Learn something each week. And that's why we put it in our toolbox, in our workbooks. if you're not familiar with a pathway to recovery, it's important to learn that, things of that nature. So for me, prayer meditation is really a key for me, but also learning is leading. So
Thank you. Wow. Jason.
Yeah, one of the biggest one of the many lies I've told myself over the years is that I ain't afraid of nothing, right? And I know it's a lie, especially now, but because I've been ingrained it so long, I like Doug think that Barry was really on to something with the prayer thing. Like, and I don't know if my thing would be prayer, but I find it like if I could, before meeting with a recovery, I need like 10 deep breaths, some type of self-evaluation or something first. I don't get that opportunity because I'm in a very fast-paced recovery center. And sometimes I don't know when the big one-on-one is coming. Like it just comes sometimes. So I just came up with a good idea. I'm going to post on the opposite side of my wall, like just a sign like stop, be aware, something, to focus me in because I have to manage my own stuff.
Beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else? Natha, what are you thinking about? You know I'm going to call on you, Natha. No? Is that her? Is she frozen? Is that her picture? She gone.
I think
She
she
gone.
froze.
Or maybe she's froze.
Yeah, it's okay, she froze. So what is the opposite of fear?
Love.
Faith.
Faith? Love?
Faith.
Faith?
Acceptance.
Acceptance?
Courage.
Courage. I love what's the thing about courage is not the absence of fear. It's courage is acknowledging the fear and doing it anyway. Right. Maggie, what were you going to say?
So I was just thinking about these 3 acronyms that I was taught early in recovery for fear, right? Face everything in recovery or fuck everything and run.
Yeah.
Right. And the other one being false emotions appearing real.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking about that, and I remember my sponsor, I think I was somewhere around had about 9 months, and she talked to me about kind of fear and wisdom. And she said that wisdom is crystallized fear and pain. So fear and pain together crystallized equals wisdom, because that means that we got something to walk with, because we had to get through something to get to that. And I was just thinking about that. But one of the things that I was, as everybody was sharing, is that, I do best when I don't even think about what I'm going to do, right? You know what I mean? I do best when I'm just kind of there and it's time for me to just coach. I do best like that, but I do have a 10-minute, like a 10-second mindfulness activity that I could do standing or sitting or wherever I am, and it forces me to breathe. And it is, whether I'm standing or sitting, that, I have to lift my toes, because when you lift your toes, it forces you to breathe. And I count backwards from 10 to 1. And wherever I am, I could do it and nobody knows that I'm doing it. So it's not about how I appear, but I always use that going into anything that is new, or that I feel any kind of anything flutter in my gut or anything. I just count from 10 backwards, lift my toe, and I always throw a prayer in there too. They say throw a prayer and not a chair.
So you know that everybody on this call just lifted their toes and see if they had to breathe. At least I did.
I'm telling you, it works.
It was too funny. I'm okay, I lift my toe. Do I have to breathe?
Yeah.
I also heard you said false emotions appear real. I also heard, and I don't know if an emotion can be false, but I'd have to, so I'm going to think about that. But a false evidence appears real as well. I've heard for
Yeah,
fear, false
yeah.
evidence that we tend to make things up and to stir up our fear. So we had a lot of, any other thoughts about the opposite of fear? I'm just turning it over to the group. Now, we talked a lot about our own fear, right? That we have, and as you've heard me say many times, I believe recovery is a journey to self-awareness. And at this stage of my life, I'm really focusing on the emotional part of my self-awareness, what emotions are running through me. I think that's a key that's virtually untapped in the human experience, that we know so little about it. So it's like a new frontier for me anyway, about what this emotional connection is. And fear to me often I don't know, fear is an emotion. I guess it is. It's a flight or fight response to fear, like a threat or a danger, whether perceived or real, right? Um, um, so I think process of recovery, as we mature, as we grow, as we evolve as a recovery coach, is to get a handle on our fear. So once we have a handle on our fear, a lot of you have talked about a recovery's fear, the person you're coaching, their fear. What are some ways that you help alleviate a recovery's fear? What are some actual techniques that you have used or that you think about or that's you? How do you do that? Or do you do that? Do you need to? Maggie?
I think appropriate self-disclosure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Neetha?
I'm not frozen anymore. Something that really helped me that I have shared with other people is somebody said in the Hebrew language, there's two different words for fear, not one.
Mm-hmm.
And one is pashard, which is like that fear of like fight, flight, real things, perceiving things as reality when they're maybe not. And then Yara is just like that other feeling when you're scared, but it's not going to be, the house is going to burn down, you're going to die, and so being able to sit and separate, like, is this a fear because something is really terrible is definitely going to happen versus, okay, nothing really bad's going to happen, but I just need to process this and think about where this fear is coming from. And is it really fear, scary fear, or is it just fear of something that could be a different kind of fear of a good thing happening, or fear of doing something wonderful, but scared to do it?
So let me ask you a question. Out of those two words, if I'm afraid that a meteor is going to hit the earth and we're all going to die, which one does that fall into?
Bashard. Yes. Yes.
That's right.
Here you're going to have a best-selling next book that's going to hit the Times top list is Yahara.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Gotcha. Doug.
Yeah, this is a good question. One of the tools that I like to use is the wellness book. I think a lot of the recoveries that voice a concern and a fear regarding what to do next. In that stabilization stage, we're here to help, maintain the drama of life, and getting out there and now getting involved in your own recovery. I think it's important to set those goals, and for some recoveries you have to do it in smaller steps. That's why I love that recovery book, because it explains perfectly, when do you want to have this done, who's going to be involved with you, type of thing. So I think it, as facilitators and recovery coaches, we need to, to help address the fear, and what concerns they have going into that endeavor, and then help manage it with time management and the support systems that we can provide, and and go from there. So that's what I like to use.
Well said. Thank you. Mike?
There we go. I think another thing for me, and that really works, other than what's already been said here too. We do identify a lot of goals on the RAP plan that we use, or the recovery work plan that we use, wellness plan that we use. And I think part of it is if they are fearful about a certain thing or a certain change that they want to make, if there's like research that we can do together, whether it's we look things up together or we go to an appointment with somebody, like for example, if they're doing an intake for like, medicated assisted treatment or something like that, going to that intake appointment with them, the appropriate use of story was absolutely the first one on my list, disclosing something that hey, listen, I can empathize with you on that one because this is my experience in that area, when it's appropriate, and again, not to shortcut learning, right? but absolutely, trying to make that connection and help somebody work through a fear.
Right. Thank you. Barry?
So usually, I don't know, I usually like try to lighten the room. Like I usually crack a joke or say something kind of funny, or ask them a funny question, and smile and just let them know that we're here to do some stuff, but we don't have to be that serious, so that they'll open up a little more.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Yeah, I'm Carolyn. I was thinking about a question like, what is the worst thing that can happen, and maybe try to minimize the fear and try to figure out what's behind the fear. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. That's what I thought about.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think that's also a question that could escalate the fear or alleviate the fear, right? So that's your art of coaching, of knowing when to pull that type of question out. Other techniques that people have used when they see that their recovery is frightened. Virginia, I'm going to call on you because you're so good at this, and whether you know it or not.
Thank you, Phil. So one of the techniques that I use is asking, when was it a time when they felt this kind of fear before, and how did they manage that? What worked for them. I'm treating them as their best resource. So I'm sure that there's been other situations in which they felt some fear. How did they get beyond that? Yeah.
So when Virginia speaks, right, that I think we want to keep it sometimes very basic, that Virginia has a very kind, soft, welcoming persona, right? So when you think about, anybody watch Instagram videos or TikTok videos? Anybody ever watch when the dog, like the abandoned street dog, is incredibly frightened and scared? What are the techniques that people use to approach the dog? Tell me. What do?
They feed them.
Slowly, calm.
Yeah.
Take it
What do you
very
say, Doug?
slow.
Slow,
calm.
Is there anger in their voice?
No, it's kindness. Yeah.
So who said kindness?
I did. Yeah.
So I think, we and Barry hit on it too, like lightening the room. When you see, when my kids, and tugs at my heartstrings, when my kids are scared, that's when I'm my most tender, right? A lot of times you're not gonna, you afraid? I'll give you something to be afraid about. Shut the fuck up. That's like old school parenting and that kind of crap. No, it's when I became like, oh my gosh, come here, honey. What are you so afraid? Like, hold them, be kind, tender. It might not want to be too probing. It's not real difficult, but that's when we become our most tender, when we sense, for the most part, there might be other times where we want to switch it up, but I mean, we're our most tender when people are their most fearful, I would hope. Any thoughts about that? Yeah, Michael.
The first thing that came to mind was patience, right? You have
Yeah.
to, I think you have to have a lot of, with kids especially, like you have to have patience. My daughter, 2 days ago, she lives on campus in Central, and there was a fire right underneath her room, right?
Oof.
So, and she's the RA. She's in charge of the second floor, and mostly, at one day out of the week, she's in charge of the whole building. So, and I hear it in her voice, right? I call her to make sure she's okay, and she's like, "Dad, I'm okay." I was like, "Everybody okay?" "Yeah, everybody made it out." But I hear it in her voice, right? I know my daughters. As soon as I asked her, I said, because she was gonna get displaced to a hotel, they were gonna pay. So I asked her, "Do you want to come home instead of going?" She said, "Yes, Dad, I would love to come home instead of." So I go get her. The whole ride home from New Britain to Hartford, calm, and I'm having a great conversation with her. The minute she sees my wife, she just
Yeah,
throws
burst
herself.
into tears.
The
Yeah.
minute my wife opens the door, she goes, "Hey, baby." And it was like, who the heck is this little girl? Like she was okay in the car. And it's just,
Yeah.
she felt safe enough to let that go. And I think that's what we need to do, right? Is to have people safe enough, right? Get them safe enough to let go.
Yeah, well said. I love that story. Ed.
I love this discussion. A while back, I remember someone talking about fears, and she used to always say an expression: name it and frame it. And what she meant by that was to identify what the fear is, its causes, talk about it, try to identify it. How long have you been experiencing this, etc. But Phil, when you mentioned about the kind and gentle way of approaching it also, I was thinking, name it, frame it, and don't shame it.
Oh, look at you, Ed. Look at
Well, you
you.
gave me the idea, Phil.
Oh, you're
So
like,
I think I'd like to be using that approach with my recoveries.
yeah. Well, it's in the book, Ed. Thank you.
Okay.
Doug.
Yeah, I just want to let Ed know this is a mic and that's a drop. So nice job, buddy. Um, I look at it this way. And your analogy, Phil, was perfect about the gentleness and approach to the dog. And I think, if anybody has ever gone through trauma informed care,
Right.
one of the first things out of the gate is safety. We
Yeah.
want them to feel safe and build a collaboration of trust and in so doing, we empower that person and fear begins to diminish. But I love that. Don't shame it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. So another question is, so when we're talking about how we deal, some of the techniques we might use when in recovery, we sense that they're fearful or afraid. We're discussing some of the techniques. Think about a time when you've been really afraid. And you talked about this at the beginning, right? Some of the instances where you're afraid. What do you need from someone? And now this is going to make you dig a little bit. What do you want to see from someone? If someone walks in on you when you're deeply afraid, what is it you want? What is it you need? What kind of approach? Laura.
I don't like to be talked at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, well, not I think, I know. I know that I also respond best if the person allows me to figure out what the answers need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately I'm the only one that knows.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be told what they think I should do.
what do you want their demeanor to be like?
Soft, attentive,
Yes. Beautiful.
interested.
Mhm. Good. Thank you. Those are great answers. Appreciate that. Ed, what do you need when you're afraid?
Just very quickly, what I need always is reassurance that I can do it and that I'll get through it. And secondly, the reassurance that if it doesn't succeed the way I hope it to be, I will still be okay.
And the person that's giving you this reassurance, what do you want their demeanor to be like?
Understanding, respectful of my fear, and not be dismissive.
Well said. Thank you. Reggie.
I think I'd like a calm, non-judgmental sounding board.
Okay. Simply put, calm, non-judgmental sounding board. Well said. Mike.
I always hit the hand before the mute. I don't know why. I think for me, it comes from a kind of an experience. When you were like, what's wrong with you, that kind of thing. I'm like, obviously you've met my father. So that was the parenting technique that I grew up with. So I think that might have a lot to do with the fear of failure. You know what I mean? And it's like, if I'm presented with something, and I could give you a perfect example of that happened to me last year. I hate bees and wasps because I got the crap stung on me when I was a kid. And I had a nest up in my sliding glass door, and having to face that stunk, especially being that I was alone having to do it, and for me, I think it's the no shaming for sure, and trying to understand from, the experience that I'm coming from as to why that exists, and don't do it for me, but help me come to a decision and a solution, be collaborative, if you will, you know what I mean? Use me as a resource to where we can try to come to something, and then, yeah, just be supportive, and that support might be help me with it.
Gotcha. Thank you. Maggie.
Oops. So a silent hug, right? And the feeling of patience, like just, like not a rushed type of a thing, like just kind of just a silent hug to be with. There was a lady who said to me one time about, she had just lost, through delivery, she had lost her baby. And she said the most profound thing for her was that she had a friend who came in and just sat in the room.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm, just that.
I think about it too. I think sometimes when you do get like a cancer diagnosis, right, that Doug talked about and that I've had, that probably several of us have had, it's the fear of the unknown. I guess luckily this is my second time through, so it's not that unknown. So, but I was trying to think about what I need, and I told the staff this yesterday, and I've told many other individuals that oftentimes when you get into a position of leadership, people say, when they hear you've had anything I can do, let me know, or you lose a loved one, just let me know what I can, and that puts the onus on me to tell you what to do for me. And so nothing gets done. And we've talked about this, I think, even here. What I've come to the conclusion is, I just need people to check in on me. It's not anything, we're in this day and age that nobody's so busy. We're used to managing many text messages, emails, phone calls, that just checking in saying, how you doing? And I said this yesterday, and Jolie texted me this morning, how you living? How's your day going? And I've had like 4 or 5 today. So sometimes, you never know when you just reach out and say, how are you? That helps break that pattern of isolation that fear often drives us to. Fear makes me think I'm all alone, that I'm isolated, that nobody else is feeling this way or nobody cares. And really, I just need somebody to say, hey, what's up, Phil? How you doing? Barry.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know. Michael said it earlier. For me, I need safety, and then I'm not alone. Those are 2 things I need most when I'm in fear. I need to know that I'm not in this by myself, and that I'm safe. So that's pretty much. And it's simple. Sometimes some confident words can make me feel safe, or sometimes just a presence of someone can make me feel safe.
Barry, let me ask you a question.
Oh.
You are like one of the most calm, chill people I know. When was the last time you were afraid?
Oh, all the time. But I don't have to react to it.
I know, but give me a specific, like recently. When was the last time you were afraid about something?
I don't know. I have to
See,
think.
I knew you wouldn't even know. But that's kind of like, I think if I was going to answer that question, when was the last time I was really afraid? I think I had a reaction to my like medication, and it was like my blood pressure dropped out and like everything just kind of, ever have that feeling like right before you're going to faint? And that was like that rush of fear, like, oh my God, is this the final stroke? Am I going out right now? And that terrified me. But what was interesting now I'm thinking about it, it was my daughter's best friend is a nurse, and she was super kind, super calm, and just said, you're probably just having a reaction to your medication. Sit down, put your feet up, let's get you some water. And, she alleviated my fear almost immediately. She just happened to be there. So, but, you can drive yourself into a panic sometimes when those things happen. Anybody else recall a recent event where you were afraid and what happened and how it was alleviated? No, you guys, so you talk about being afraid, but you can't remember when the last time was that you were? No?
I'll come in.
So
Thank you. From Thailand.
From Thailand. Well, there's a reason why I ended up moving here is because there was so much fear when I lost my job and didn't have any security. But as Nitha knows, there's the reason I started this course, because I lost my job and it's put me on to this path of becoming a recovery coach. But if I hadn't lost my job, I wouldn't be here today. But to alleviate it, I think it motivated me to get onto this course. But there was just so much financial scares around it. I had to leave Cyprus. I moved to Thailand. So kind of changed my whole life around. But 6 months later, I'm living in Thailand. I've got my exam next month. I've got a job now. I'm getting a visa sorted out here. I'm moving into my new apartment this weekend. So things worked out. But it's because I let go of trying to control the situation. And for me, that's how I got over the fear, was just let go. And whatever will happen and be the right thing for me, which is very difficult for me to kind of accept. But acceptance and letting go has been the key for me.
That's profound. Thank you for that. That helped me a lot. I love that. Reggie, what's up?
So about a month ago, I had this excruciating pain in my shoulder and neck. And when this meeting first started, I was leaving PT because I have 3 massive tears in my rotator cuff from a fall I took in May. So I'm not supposed to do any kind of side planks or anything like that. I do a lot of mind and body workouts, mostly yoga and Pilates. And I was doing side planks and I forgot about it. So I went to the emergency room, and my wife she was on a business trip, and I had called, after I called my 24-hour, nurse, and they said, well, put ice on it, switch from ice to heat, and then see somebody within 24 hours. But so I took something, but it was excruciating. So when I spoke to my wife, someone was next to her, and they said, well, he might be having a stroke because it was on my left side. She said, don't drive yourself, So, of course I drove myself, and, on the trip, I'm saying something's going to happen. I probably shouldn't have driven. And I feel this pain in my chest, and when I get to the hospital, they checked me, and they kept me for a few days, and they thought I was a little younger than I actually am. And they saw a look in my heart. And, anyway, they told me to get an angiogram because my heart was only working at a certain percentage. And I wouldn't do that because I'm into holistic medicine. So I had to do the checking myself. And I did that week, and then I had it done last week. And they didn't even put a stent in there, but they're still trying to find out. So the whole process, I had fear during the but the thing about it, the fear was dissipated because I took action. I was taking action on my terms, not just what a medical profession was telling me, because they know very little about nutrition. So I come from a mother that, was in the medical field, was a nurse, and, told me to run my own stuff. But I was fearful.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any last closing thoughts about our fear discussion and recovery coaching? Katrina, you want to say hello? You want to jump in?
Hi.
Hi.
So we're talking about the last time we felt fear. The last time I truly felt fear to the point where it radiated throughout my body, I think was my son got the wrong diagnosis. He was having these spasms, and he was very small, and the doctor said he was having seizures, and I did my research, and these seizures were deadly in infants. And it was at that moment I truly I felt it. And what got me through it was another woman who was going through her own stuff at the time said the best thing you can do is advocate for those who don't have a voice. And this was before I worked at CCAR. And so that I needed to get these answers. It was the not knowing and doing the research on my own that was scaring me, right? So I advocated, and I spoke, and I called these doctors. Sometimes I was yelling and tried not to, but I was advocating for answers, and finally we got answers and the right diagnosis, and everything on the right track. But it was, if I didn't make that first move, if I didn't have somebody lift me up out of my fear, I would have stayed there and I would have been paralyzed by it. So yeah, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for the story, Katrina. Doug, you have the last word, my man.
Yeah, just real quick on going what Katrina said, because advocating is so perfect. This wasn't happening to me. This happened to one of our recovery coaches. The recovery came in, was somewhat emotional. The recovery coach picked up on it and then asked the question, and she divulged she just got diagnosed with an STD, and she was distraught. And I remember the recovery coach left the room, went to go get her some water or coffee, whatever it was, came into my office and asked if she could self-disclose that she also is going through that and was on medication. And I said, it's your pathway. You can disclose if that's your recovery story. And she did. And my goodness, what a connection there on advocating for that fear that client was having. And and they're making roads to recovery, both of them. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your contributions. Thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. That's our 90 minutes are up. And this concludes this Coaching for Coaches session topic on fear. Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate each and every one of you.